everybody. It's so nice to see such a big crowd. We're going to have a fantastic discussion about an amazing ballet, and I know that's why you're here. My name is Jen Summers. I'm the director of the Houston Ballet Academy, and on behalf of Stan, oh, thank you. On behalf of Stan, I've got a fan. Oh. On behalf of Stan Welch and Julie Kent, our artistic directors, I'm pleased to welcome you to our dance talk about Mayerling, Sir Kenneth MacMillan's Mayerling. We have a great panel tonight. I know that you're familiar with all these faces, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. To my left is Chase O'Connell, and he is the Anita B. Studi principal dancer. Prior to joining Houston Ballet in 2022, he was a principal dancer with Ballet West, and he will be debuting in the role of Crown Prince Rudolf later this month. Welcome, Chase. To his left is the wonderful Karina González, who is the Houston Ballet. Yes, you can go ahead and follow. I've done that right too. She's the Houston Ballet Guild principal dancer. She joined the company in 2010 as a soloist and was promoted to principal in 2013. She danced the role of Mary Vetsera when Mayerling had its North American premiere at the Hobby Center in 2017. She will reprise that role this year and also dance the role of Countess Marie Larisch. So you can clap for her. And then to her left is Briget Kuhns, who is a graduate of, yes, go. Briget is a graduate of the Academy, and she was a member of Houston Ballet 2 before joining the company in 2013. She was promoted to demi-soloist in 2016 and soloist in 2017. And she will be dancing the roles also of Countess Marie Larisch, which I'm so glad I have two Larisches because I think she might be the most important character in the story, in my opinion. And also Mitzi Casper in this year's production of Mayerling. All right, yes, great job. So I'm going to share a little bit of Houston Ballet history that I think most of you are aware of, but if you're not, you're about to be. Sir Kenneth MacMillan was such an important figure in 20th century storytelling ballets. It's just really changed or expanded what was possible in using ballet to tell stories. And he served as an artistic advisor at Houston Ballet from 1989 to 1992. In addition to Mayerling, the company has 4 one-act ballets, four one-act ballets, and his full-length Manon, which I'm sure many of you have seen. So I thought I'd ask all of you, why is MacMillan's work important sort of generally in ballet, but also to you as artists? And any one of you can start. And you can talk about Mayerling, you can talk about other ballets you've done, but sort of, he is a big figure, he is an important choreographer to dance, and influential to all of you as an artist, I'm sure.
Yeah, so, hello? Yes. Okay. Yes, I think, Sir Kenneth MacMillan is known by the extraordinary way to narrate a story ballads. As you say, I think he kept the classical vocabulary. You still see beautiful lines and steps and classical ballet, pure classical ballet. But I think he kind of goes deeper into the psychological part of the characters. I feel like he doesn't let anything for the imagination. I feel like he really portrays the feelings that he want to say in the steps. And I think as an artist, it kind of, help you to find the way that you want to interpret the roles in a way. I think he gives you that freedom. And I think that's why his ballets is still alive, and so many people enjoy doing it, just because you kind of find yourself finding your own signature into the ballet.
And you said something interesting that he really creates the character through the steps. But so I was thinking that everything's very intentional and purposeful. But you're saying there's also room for personal interpretation. Can you expand on that a little?
Yes, I think I think because he goes more into the story, like, it's not just about the steps. Especially because he's trying to tell a story, and especially with Mayerling, it's a story that is a real people, like it happened, it's history. And I feel like he goes deeper into especially the dark side of it. A lot of his theme elements, I want to say that it's love, of course, but loss and death. And I have the experience of, doing Manon and doing Son of the Earth, that is kind of bringing the same darkness in there. That I have been lucky to do a couple of his ballets, and I feel like it kind of gave me, the understanding of what he wanted, especially with Mayerling.
There's something too, I feel like, about his work. It really sticks with you, not only as a dancer, but as an audience member. And I think probably for a lot of dancers, our first ballet or version of a ballet we've seen are probably the MacMillan ones, right? Like the first Romeo and Juliet I ever saw a little snippet of, it was his. So it's like even your earliest exposure as an artist, as a dancer, a lot of times I find is to his work, because it's just lasted. It's just lasted throughout time. It's great.
Yeah, it's not like you're just dancing to dance. Like, you might be dancing, but you're telling a story throughout the entire night. So every movement you do, every look you do, every gesture you do, it's a whole arc of a story. That character is who you are.
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful segue to my next question, because one of the things that makes Mayerling special is, unlike so many ballets, the protagonist is male. And you're getting this opportunity to explore, as Karina said, a real person in Crown Prince Rudolf. And he has quite an arc in this ballet. Can you share a little bit about who you think he is, and how he may differ from other lead roles that you've done? Because certainly you've done many lead male roles.
He's a very complex character. You first meet him at his marriage to Stephanie, which is an arranged marriage that he's not really excited for. He doesn't want to be there. He kind of likes to do whatever he wants. He flirts with other girls. He flirts with her sister right in front of her, just like kind of upset her. But he has this estranged relationship with his mother, who he just wants to be loved, wants her to see him for who he is, but she just keeps pushing him away. And so you have these different characters coming in through his life, like Larisch. They loved each other at one point, but now that's not acceptable. So she's like bringing girls in for him to
Be with.
be with. Thank you. So, and it's very different than any other role I've done. It's usually a man and a woman. You're with each other the entire ballet. That 1 act, 2 act, 3 act. This, it's 4 different women, many different paras. You have these different relationships. You're going through these different journeys throughout the night. It can get very dark very fast. He's obsessed with death and a gun and skulls, and he brings that throughout the ballet, and it gets very mental at one point. Like, it's all in your head, and you feel this darkness overcome you, and it kind of takes you on this journey throughout the night.
So he is dark, and again, that's different. How do you get inside of him? How do you, especially while doing ballet, how do you get inside of a character like that?
For me, I have to find myself in the character. I have to see why they do these things. Why would I do that thing? How could I see myself in that situation? So for me, like an assigned marriage, of course, no one wants to be there for that, so you can kind of get ready for that. And then just like with these ladies coming in and out, it pushes you there. You're wanting this love. You can feel that anger inside of you, and so that builds up. And these more guys come at you, and that starts growing. So you grow automatically within yourself. And by the time you get to the Stephanie Pata, that you are just boiling, you're heated, and it's just, you don't really have to push it. That's what's so great about the choreography. Like, you're not forcing something. It's just automatic. The steps make it how it's going to happen.
So you feel like the movement itself is fueling the character?
Yes, yes, to a point.
Yeah.
To a point. Also, the movement and the interactions with the women, and just the storyline, like getting drunk, shooting up needles, like you're doing these movements that you can feel your body just going.
You mentioned Princess Stephanie, and I know that, and I think the pas de deux that you're talking about is quite violent.
Yes.
Can you talk about that and
Yeah.
how you manage that in a way to be believable but also safe?
Yeah.
And maybe set the scene a little for everybody in that pas de deux.
Yeah, so this is the very end of Act 1. So you've already done a pas de deux with Stephanie, or no, pas de deux with Louise, a pas de deux with Larisch, pas de deux with the mom, and this is your fourth pas de deux of just the first act. So that's 45 minutes, and you've done a men's dance, a solo, and some other scenes. And so you're pretty exhausted by that point, and you go into, it's like your wedding night. And so you're going into the bedroom, and you're kind of going in, kind of taunting her. Like you have the gun, and you're pointed at her, and you just want to scare her. So that's kind of where you start the part of that act, scaring her through the gun, through the skull, and then the part just kind of take off. She's running, she's screaming, and you're kind of just doing this crazy part of the lifting, throwing, which at first it's kind of a little violent, but then you find the ways to do it with the girl to make it soft, make sure she's fine to the ground, and then you can keep going through it. Like you build it up in a safe way, and then it kind of ends at their wedding night in the bed, and that's how Act 1 ends. So it's a long journey there, but it happens very fast.
And then, so did you do that pas de deux last time? No, you've never been Stephanie. Okay. I just sort of wondering when you're talking about you sort of build into being able to be both violent and safe. How did the stager introduce that to you, and set parameters around it, or how do you work with your partner to?
So it's kind of like you learn the steps, and then you see how to make it safe and how to make it comfortable for each person. I mean, we do have a gun, so it's kind of like, are you okay with me pointing at your head? Do you want me to point it to a little bit to the right? Like, we talk about those things, like what you're fine with personally. And then the choreography also is just, the choreography is what it is. So it's kind of, you have to figure out, okay, I'm going to throw you down on 2. Where and when would you like me to do that? Like, how much force do you want? Because everyone's different. Some people want to feel the pressure, and some people want to do it by themselves. So you have a discussion and see what is safe for each of you.
I mean, those things happen in other pas de deux too, right? That
Yes.
level, that kind of communication, but probably on a different level than
Yes. Because there's a lot more throwing in this.
With not just her, right? Do you get thrown? A lot. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Karina? The building drama while being safe. Really, how that happens for you?
Yeah, I think that's a process. I believe that you in the studio first we kind of learn the steps very slowly. We watch a lot of people that have done it before. The teacher goes through the music and which count you're gonna do that step, and then it kind of, when you assimilate what's happening and you talk about it, try it slowly every time a little more and more and more, and then you kind of build confidence with your partner, and I don't know, there are weeks, especially for this ballet, I feel like it's one of the most weeks that we have learning the ballet. It's been, the first time was 4 weeks with Carl in here teaching the ballet, and I think we kind of did it almost every day, especially with my role, Mary Becerra. I think it was almost every day by, almost an hour or 2 a day, going through the steps and really making sure that we are safe, which is the purity. And then from that, building the emotions into that. like talking about Stephanie Paradis, I have never done it. For me, it's one of my favorites to watch, but I cannot imagine how difficult it is because it's, bringing especially the violence in the movements by being carefully and not hurting each other, and which I think is pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to like get to where you want to get. Even today, I had my run with Connor, and it's funny how, in rehearsals in our own, you rehearse and you feel one way and you do it and you talk about it and you feel fantastic, and then somehow when you're in front of, we actually did a full run with the entire company, it's completely different. Your energy or your stamina, that passion, that drive is totally different than I have been doing it for 4 weeks. So I cannot imagine now in front of the audience and adding all that extra element, your nerves and that excitement. So yeah, it takes you to another level every time. I feel like every time we do it, it gets to another level. And then for sure it's more about that. It's about really trusting that partner.
So let's go back to Rudolf, because you and I were chatting before we turned on our mics that you really are in every scene. That this is, not only is Rudolf the protagonist, he's literally on stage the whole time. Can you just talk a little bit about, I guess, that and just sort of, and when you're not on stage, what's happening, and also how you prepare for that physically and mentally?
It's very daunting. So we learned all the partas for like the first week and a half. And then Carl was like, by third week, you need all your girls in a room and you need to run to act one, because that's the hardest part of the ballet. Once you're on, you're not off for 45 minutes. You come on, you do a solo, you do a pas de deux, you do another pas de deux, you do a group dance, you do another pas de deux. And once you go off, it's just changing your shirt, coming back on, and then it's another scene. So you might be off for, the first one's 10 seconds, and then you go off. And then it's like a short little girls dance before the mom pa. And that might be 30 seconds, so that's an actual chance to change your shirt, get some water, and like try to compose yourself. Then after that pas, it's literally you walk off, walk right back on into another scene, into the Stephanie pas de deux, where you have to have so much energy and so much commitment to it. And so that's also very hard because we're talking about the rehearsals, and you can rehearse those pas de deux as much as you want, but when you're on in Act One, there's no preparing you for it. You don't know how you're going to feel exactly that day or how exhausted you're going to feel. And by the time you get to the Stephanie pas de deux, she's like fresh and she feels good, and you are just dying inside. You're drenched. So that's also funny, like with each girl, where they're coming in from it, like how, like for me, I'm thinking about my arcs the entire time, but what is their arc coming to you? Like when they get to you, how are they feeling? What's happening with them and their storyline? So that's also tricky to come with. And it's funny with 4 different girls, like if I'm doing Swan, like, okay, I have my one girl, I can practice different moves each day and get better and better. But this one, it's like, it's too overwhelming to think about it all. And so you just kind of go into a run hoping that we're all on the same page and we're all going to do what we rehearsed, because to practice each little thing, it would take hours.
Yeah, I have to say that the funny thing about Mary is that I don't see you like halfway of the ballet. So like he has already done an entire ballet. He is exhausted, and then I'm fresh like a lettuce. So every time I see him, I'm like, okay, here we go.
It's like you're the prince in Sleeping Beauty. How like the prince in Sleeping Beauty doesn't come on till like Act 3, right? Where like he's Aurora in this scenario, where he's done like the Rosadage and like all the things, and then you join fresh.
How does it feel to have the shoe on the other foot?
It's very nice. I feel very important.
Has Connor given you any thoughts? He's the one dancer we have that's reprising this role. What are the things that you feel comfortable sharing that he shared with you about it?
He warned me of Act 1 of how awful it was going to be. And it's also just so helpful to watch. Like, he's very clear with his character and his acting, so it's so nice to watch someone who knows going in what their plan is. Like, for us, we learn a scene here, a scene there, a scene here, a scene here, and you're trying to figure out, okay, I don't know how I'm going to feel in this scene. Like you're drinking, but you're not really there yet. And so once you do your first run through, then it's like, oh, this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm going to be at this point, and it helps a lot progress that story. And he also like helps me, okay, like don't get too crazy in Stephanie Potter. Like it needs to build. Like you're taunting her, and then it gets a little rough. Don't come in guns a-blazing.
All right, so I keep saying Rudolph's the protagonist, but you know, he's not in control of that much. And both Chase has been referring to all the women that he dances with, and I thought it might be interesting to sort of pick them off one by one and look at the relationship, and also how the pas de deux work itself shifts when the kind of relationship shifts. So I'm interested in the mother very much so, because you are indicating that your understanding of Rudolph is that relationship is potentially, and the fact that she did push him off and she was so cold with him is perhaps an impetus for his lack of mental stability. So can you talk a little bit about the pas de deux with Empress Elizabeth and the mother-son pas de deux dynamic versus what it would be in a normal ballet where it's a lover?
So Rudolph was sent away when he was born to be raised by other people to learn the ways of princehood, if you will. So he wasn't raised by his mother, and I think, so the first two children were raised by Elizabeth, but her third child she did raise, and so that was like her little girl who she loves the most. And so I think Rudolph wants that. He sees the love that she could give, but he wants it for himself, and she can't do it. She refuses to look at him, to understand it, to talk to him. And so the entire time he's reaching for her, he's grabbing for her, and she's just pushing him away. And it can come across almost like a lover. So that's the very tricky part. I think he idolizes her, and so he is begging for her, but she is the one that keeps the distance and keeps him away from herself, doesn't let him into her inner circle, if you will. So it's not violent, but it's not graceful either. You definitely see the hurt, and you definitely see him yearning for her. And so I feel like that's the first time in the ballet that you kind of sympathize with Rudolph. The entire time you're kind of like, he's a jerk, he is awful. And this is the first time you see, okay, this is what led him to this point. You see that he has this awful relationship with his mother. He has no relationship with his father. And so that's where I start to sympathize with him also. I feel like that's where I can kind of get behind his story.
Right, because you don't want, I mean, you will because you're a dancer and it's your job, but to play a jerk.
Yeah, you don't want to hate who you are.
Yeah, hate who you are.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
You have to understand it and be behind it if you want to like be real.
Yeah. So do you feel like in that pas de deux work, are there movements in that pas de deux work that you've done in another context that you have to adapt, not necessarily handholds or whatever, but not the mechanics, but the intention or the, I don't know. Or is it, yeah?
No, that's a good question. I feel like some like hugs and holds are similar to other pas de deux, but with this one now, he's lower than her. You kind of see the hierarchy. Like she is above him. He's the one pleading. You kind of see him sink down when he's with her. He feels ashamed. He feels lonely. And I feel like that's kind of different in this one. He's not just some big guy trying to give her a hug. Like he's the baby.
Do either of you have thoughts about Empress Elizabeth?
I learned her. I don't perform her, but she's a very tricky character to play because you have to play her quite dry, not very emotionally driven, which is hard because the Rudolphs come in very emotional. Like the very first thing they do is they hug her, and she's like, she literally just sits there and is like, I don't know how to love my son. And you have to show it very actually like not on your face. It's actually a very like neck down type of acting, and her tension and how she shows just how uncomfortable she is with him even in her presence. Because they have a very small interaction at the wedding, and you see it like right at the front, everyone's waltzing around, and you can tell that she doesn't know how to communicate with him. She doesn't know how to say, congratulations on your wedding. She's just like, yes, you're here. So it's a really interesting thing to play, because you hear mother and you think mother, but no, like she's not. She's very distant and quite cold. And you can see it in the pas de deux. It's very interesting to watch.
All right, let's move on to my favorite character. So I really was just so struck, because Karina, you and I did the dance talk back in 2017, and because it was new to us, we had Stephanie and Mary and Rudolf. And then I went to see it, and I was like, oh no, actually, Countess Marie Larisch, she's driving a lot of the narrative. I remember talking to Sarah Webb about that, just being like, actually, is she in some ways the lead character? And so all three of you, I think just talk a little bit about, you already alluded to the fact that they were lovers at one point. So they have a closeness and an intimacy before the ballet starts. But she comes on a lot, she manipulates, she drives him, or at least that was my impression, and I would love to hear from the three of you, sort of your take on her and her role in his life and potentially his demise. Even though I think she loved him.
Yes, so as you say, I think she plays a very important role in the whole story. I love in one of the documentaries that I saw online that they call her the evil genius, because she knows how to play her game, and I think she has like both sides. I think it's her way to stay kind of relevant in society. They were lovers once, so she still kind of beg him for that love, or that kind of old memory that she has with him.
Do you think she loves him
I
throughout the ballet?
She really loves him. I think she really cares, and I think it's both. I think because she wasn't high in society, she knows then that love wasn't going to happen. Like she wasn't going to be the one staying with him. So I feel like she found the way to kind of give him everything that he wanted, all his desires, his physical desires. So that's how she is the one that bring him, the woman that he wants, because she can't give him that. So that's the way that she loves him, I guess. At the end, it's funny because I wasn't thinking that her as a victim, like she's she knows what she's doing. She's playing all the cards just to kind of stay with him. But I do feel a little sorry for her. At the end, when he is in this like low mental state, she knows that the only thing that he needs in that moment is Mary. So she knows that she can give him that, and she brings Mary to him. And in that moment, I feel like she knows that she kind of lost him. So yeah, I feel like it's one of my favorite roles to portray.
She's definitely, like you said, like she knows what she's doing throughout the ballet, and she knows kind of in a way like what she even wants for the prince. Like she's deciding how this happens, to the point where there's a scene between her and Mary's mom, who Mary's mom was also with Rudolf. That's a testy thing. Like actually, like it goes like through the family. And while Mary's like doing her solo, you'll see like Larisch and Mary's mom in the back, like looking at the portrait of him, being like, is this right for her? Is she ready for him? And they're like, yes. And she does this card trick, but she rigs the card trick to make this little girl at the time believe that that's like who she's meant to be with and who she's gonna love. You see her like she stacks the deck of cards and reads it how she wants everything to play out. So she's definitely very calculated in her choices that she makes to make sure that she's getting the result she wants, which is ultimately for the prince, for Rudolf.
The result she wants is she still wants to be the one in a sense, pleasing him.
In control of
Yeah.
him, but out of love. I
Yeah.
guess it's a very twisted form of love,
Right.
but definitely love.
Yeah, Carl said that she's the one person that truly loved him for who he was. So it's very sad.
And then she continues to indulge him almost, like spoil him with his desires, and which ultimately lead to his demise, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like all she wants to do is make him happy. Like in the first scene, it's the wedding, and he's doesn't want to be there, doesn't want anything to do with it, and so Larisch's like, oh, why don't you flirt with her sister? That'll make you happy. Like, go do that. That'll be fun. And so it's all of her kind of guiding him around the entire ballet of like, oh, try this. You might like that. Do this. Do that. So.
and since we've been talking about pas de deux work, do you feel, I mean, is there's intimacy with her, you think?
Yeah, she's the opposite of the mother. She's the one that's begging for him to look at her, to love her. And at one point he does kind of give in, but he realizes, oh, this can't happen. Like, we're done. Like, we have to move on with our lives. And she's the one that's still trying to bring him back.
Yeah, that happens pretty early on in the ballet, that she gets, in a sense, the final rejection from him, but then throughout the ballet she still does everything for him. So that's, I guess, in a way, like how you see her love for him play out, how he's like, I don't want you, and she's like, well, if you don't want me, then let me give you what you want. And that's how she stays a part of him and with him, and still in communication with him, is by doing that.
Do you think it hurts her throughout the ballet, all the things she does for him?
I would think so. I think there's, you can see it. Like, there's moments, the very first time that he meets Mary, when she's too young for him, but it's kind of just to be like, hey, like, she'll be ready for you in a couple years. There's this moment where, as Mary's bowing, Larisch is just standing there, like, watching him look at her, and then he starts to leave and run off with his sister, and like, Larisch has a moment where she's like, no, wait, what about me? And she grabs him and realizes, like, wait, I'll come back for you. Like, you see her, like, having these moments of where she's, like, realizing, oh yeah, he wants something else. Like, it's not me. And she tries to grab it. She tries to fight for it.
It's not a happy ending, friends. I hope you didn't come here for a happy conversation. All right, Bridget, what about Mitzi? Tell us a little bit about her and her relationship with Rudolf.
Yes. So Mitzi is, she's only in Act 2. The first, like, 15, 20 minutes of Act 2, you're in a tavern or a brothel, better term. And it's her business. She runs it. She is, like, the chosen girl that Rudolf wants to come visit when he doesn't, when he wants to unwind, to the point where it starts off, he brings his wife there. And he's like, hey, look, this is where we're going to hang out for the night. And it's with Mitzi there. The interesting thing about Mitzi is that while being there for Rudolf, she's actually has secretly been kind of told that she has to keep tabs on him and what he is up to by the emperor's, like, right hand. So I believe that she genuinely loves Rudolf as well. I think that through her business, she's found, I think that she loves him in that way. But she also doesn't want to lose her business, so she has to do what she is told. So there's little scenes where the Hungarian officers come in and they're handing out these flyers to say, hey, we're going to go have, like, a rally or a protest for this, to stand up for these rights. And Rudolf is looking at one, and she takes it from her, hides it on her back. She's like, no, don't worry, just go dance, have fun. And then she looks at it, and you see her go, crap, I have to go give this information that now he's been here while this has happened. And it starts, that to me is, that scene starts the initial spiral of where, even without Rudolf knowing, that is when it first starts to be like, oh, things are going to start to not go his way, like, really. Because it's in the very next scene then that flyer is given back to him, being like, hey, we kind of know what you're up to, who you're hanging out with. And it's a tricky scene to play, because a lot happens, and it's a lot of dancing in that scene as well, and trying to almost, like, keep Rudolf distracted from the reality of his life and what is going on in that moment.
So she's very different to dance than Larisch.
Very,
Yeah.
very different. Especially because she doesn't really want him. She has him when she has him, and she has, you know, her other people because that's the nature of her life. But I think she enjoys having him around. Like, it's definitely when he's then in the room, like, that's the only person who she is trying to get attention from. She doesn't care about the other officers or men that are in the tavern at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on that, I remember reading a little bit, and she was actually his first love. Like, actually love, which I think it's crazy. And she was the one then he actually offered the murder-suicide pact to Mitzi. And she was the one like, hey, are you crazy? I'm not taking this. Like,
yeah,
get out of
you see
here.
it happens like right at the end of the scene. He comes back in with his gun and he's like, hey, I want to do this. I want you to do it with me. She's like, you are nuts. Like, no. Like, she doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So it's so interesting because she's there for it, but then she's like, no, I'm not going that far.
But yeah, I feel like in that moment, I think you notice how important that character is for him.
Yeah.
Like, for him to actually go there for, you know, with her. I feel like it kind of shows you that relationship very strong, at least for him.
He trusts her enough to share that really deep, dark secret.
Yeah.
Also, when he first met his wife, he brought Mitzi with him to meet his wife. So that's kind of a little backstory.
It's like, oh, this is who you're with.
When he goes to meet Stephanie?
Yeah, like the first time they met, he went to go meet her in Belgium, and he brought Mitzi with him, to like kind of show that this is
That's
how it
when
works.
Stephanie should have been like, red flag. Yeah. All right, so we've talked a little bit about Stephanie. Karina, you're revisiting Mary. Can you tell, I mean, we understand a little who she is, that she's a young girl who, on one level, I mean, I think she loves him, but she's definitely manipulated into being with him. What is it like to be her, but also to be her again? And does it feel different this time?
Yes, I have to say that I think there is something so fulfilling as an artist to like come back to a role, just because you kind of, you know, you already experienced it. You know the steps very well, the music, the story, but and then somehow this time around you can kind of go deeper into the character. It's, you know, it's been 7 years since then, and so much has happened already. And it's funny to look back because I feel like this time around I portraying her in a different way. Also because I feel like I had done more research. I had an amazing opportunity to have been in a conversation with like this amazing Argentinian lady. Then she knows the story. She studied history, like ballet history, and there's so much more in each character that it's so fascinating. So yeah, before I feel like I portrayed her more as like another victim of this person, and I feel like she is as dark and as insane, as crazy as he is. And I feel like you can actually see it from the beginning. The moment that they meet, the first time they meet in secret, she is completely different than any other woman that he had had. She is not scared. She is confident. She's passionate, and I think the relationship between the two of them is completely and pure pleasure. There is, I do think she loves him, but she's 17. At 17 years old, with a 30-year-old, yeah, it's a lot of like discovering in there. And you know, going back to the story, she also knows that she has to fulfill her mother's dream of keeping her name high in society. So she knows that she can marry whoever she wants. They're going to tell her who to marry, who to love. So for her, I feel like it's the beginning of that resentment in there. And finally, you know, she has seen Rudolf since she was little. She met him at age 10, 11. And so there is a little bit of an obsession with him. You can see it in the beginning of one scene that she's like just looking at his portrait. I mean, it's this girl kind of fascinated by this figure. And then Larisch is the one that introduces to her. And I think she knows exactly what she's there, like what she wants from him. So
she's not as much of a pawn, maybe.
yeah, no. And also, this time around, I learned that Rudolf wasn't his first time either. So she went away when she was 16. She already had a man in her life. She already experienced all the things that a woman used to experience. So when she meets him, like it's all that. She's no, and I feel like she's not afraid of him compared with any other woman that you see in the ballet. She's equally as crazy, and she shows that to me.
Like she's in for the thrills.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about the end, because do you think he offers the murder-suicide to Mitzi? She says, no way. And then Mary, is it something that she actually wants to do, or is it like, oh, we've done this, and now we're going to level it up and do this, and what because seems like for me, and maybe you want to comment on this, Chase, that Rudolph's really unhappy, and that this is about, for him, exiting. But is it for her? Is she, or is she like, does she really believe it's going to happen?
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, their relationship was only 2 or 3 weeks. It wasn't, a long relationship. She kind of came to his life already when he's going through all these mental darkness. I know there is so much political, business that he's going through. He's so unhappy with his father, with her mother. I mean, there is so much darkness in there on him. Then he's, he uses morphine. He's addicted to morphine, and he goes into depression. I mean, he has all these. They call it actually demons. Like he has all these demons in his head. Then he's going through the character, and you can see him how he deteriorates through the acts. And then she comes, this kind of creature, this lover. I mean, somehow I feel like she is all the fantasies that he has. She like makes all his fantasies come true. She knows the reaction that she makes in his body. I mean, there is, you can see it in the parades, how like there is so much connection, and they become one, and immediately. So yeah, I think this is why she chooses to go out there with him, because they connected right away, and I feel like she does enjoy that power that she has on him. And of course, at 17 and completely in love with somebody, I'm going everywhere with you, even if it's death, and I feel like that's what it is. There's no, I feel like I'm trying to like make this whole bigger story, but I feel like it's just that. It's just her, a little bit, I guess, naive, I think. In her, she was a child, and, coming to this monster, and she knows that she couldn't really make decisions in her life. So this was her solution.
Do you think she feels powerful?
Oh, I think so. I think she has so much control on him, and I think she enjoys that. There's a moment that she, the gun and the skull, I feel like it represents death. Like he uses that to Stephanie, to scare Stephanie. Mary uses that to like show him that she is equal as him, like she's not afraid of him, and I think he loves that, and I think that's why it drives him crazy for her. Then finally he found somebody just like him.
Yeah, I feel like at that point it's just full lust. She brings out that skull and like seduces him with the skull, and that's exactly what he wants to see. And so it's just, from then on, he is just obsessed with her. And I feel like he is the one that has like maybe second thoughts of the gun, but she's like, no, let's do this. Like she's the one that kind of pushes him to that point. There's a point when I give her the gun, And today they're kind of talking about like, you're telling her your plan of what you want to do, and at the end, like, she puts the gun to your head, but she puts her head through at the last second to say, like, if you go, I go. Like, we're going to do this together. So I think she's very on top of it.
It's still like, you know, it's hard to believe. I'm hearing you, Karina, say, well, she's 17, so she's gullible or whatever, but I'm also hearing you say that she's being a driving force in the final scene.
Yes, and which is, you know, it's interesting because, like I said before, I think the first time I did it, it kind of felt more, like he kind of, you know, took her there. And then she, in love, kind of accepted. But I feel like hearing, even, you know, online you can see this amazing documentary of MacMillan making this ballet, and you see the original cast. It's so interesting to see that. And I feel like this time around, I even found that, like even just the way that she looks at him before, I feel like I grab him as a sorrow, like let me help you. And I feel like this time around, I'm like, no, I got you. Like we're here together. We're gonna do this together. And I feel like that's just the way. Yeah, I guess there is love in there, but I think there is so much more on her too. Like that was also her exit in her own life, maybe.
Because she doesn't have control or power over her destiny. This
Yeah,
is a way for her to take control.
Yeah, I mean, in that period of time, people really didn't have choices, like your own choices. They told you what to do when you do it. That happens with Stephanie, an arrangement marriage, and even with Elizabeth. I feel like it's all these things that society kind of tells you what to do, and finally there is this girl that she wants to have control of herself, and finally found somebody that allowed her to be free in that way.
I feel like that's a positive. It's like a positive way to stop these questions and open it up to the audience, because in a way, like it's I mean, that you're saying she's empowered to do a murder-suicide. We're gonna take that as a positive. Yeah.
Well, the interesting part about it is like we don't really know what really happened in the story. And if you go, out there is so many versions of it. We don't really know what happened. We don't know if it was actually, murder-suicide. Maybe some people say that it was the family who maybe poisoned her because he was going. There is almost a scandal with this affair. There is also another version that says that maybe she was pregnant and she had an abortion and she died. And there is other version. I mean, there is like so many possibilities, like what really happened. Of course, MacMillan chose this ending, and because there many years after, I guess somebody took Mary's body from the tomb. How do you call it, tomb? And just to see if there was actually a bullet on her skull. So that's why this version kind of maybe is the true version. So it is interesting to. I mean, I feel like the more I dig into it, like the more like I read and do my research. It's fascinating.
All right. What questions do we have here? And just as a reminder, when you ask the question, give me a moment, or actually I should be saying that more to you all. Give me a moment to repeat it into the mic so we're sure everybody hears. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for this instance. It's super interesting to meet your perspective when you're performing these important shows for all of us. And I wanted to ask you, how do you prepare mentally to perform these shows? Because for me as an spectator, I feel super emotive when I see you performing, and I don't know how do you manage that energy in the stage or before, like how do you, is it with experience, do you get prepared in the school, how do you manage that, all the energy and feelings?
So the question is about mentally preparing for roles like this. I mean, everything we've talked about tonight is it's a lot. It's a lot. It's not any of you. So how do you mentally prepare? I mean, Karina's talking about research, but in terms of going into a show on any given day.
I like to It's a tricky thing because with performing, you want to be in the moment, right? Because you don't want to be like so rehearsed that if for any reason your partner does something different, that then you kind of like are like, wait, but this isn't what we normally do, and then you kind of get yourself out of it. So it's being rehearsed and knowing what you want to say, but also being enough there with your partner or in that scene that if for some reason like a Rudolph chooses to like look at you at a different time or maybe in a slightly different way, that you are with them to respond. So it's practicing it, but then also just making sure that when it's showtime, you're very present as well. Like it's definitely by the time it's half hour, like my phone's put away. Like I'm not looking at my phone. Hopefully my family's in the seats. I have no idea. You know what I mean? That's like you kind of have to, in a way, like shut out the things that could maybe possibly take you out of your temporary reality you're putting yourself into. That's what I do, at least.
Yeah, it has been interesting because I feel like this time around I have put so much thought on this ballet. And it's, I mean, I was just going to share, I was taking a shower a few days ago and I literally came out and I don't know how long was my shower, maybe like 20 minutes. And I really, I told my husband, I'm so sorry I took longer because somehow I feel like I was going through every single scene and corrections. And so sometimes I think it's hard to kind of separate, I mean, we're here from 10 in the morning to 7 at night. I mean, this is our entire life. So, to kind of don't bring that home, I feel like I found that a little challenge, especially with roles like this. It's just more, it's not just the steps, it's not just the counts and the music, but it's, there's so much more out there. And I think that's one of the things with MacMillan's ballet, because I feel like he plays with that, that psychological part of it. And I feel like every time I want to bring something new and why I chose to do that. So especially with ballets like this, I feel like it's hard to separate it. But I'm going to take shorter showers now.
I was also thinking about how it must be difficult, particularly for Rudolph and Mary, to come down after a show. Like, how do you, after going through that, how do you become Chase again? And maybe you don't know yet. Maybe we'll find out. We'll report back in a couple of weeks.
I actually haven't seen Chase in a couple days.
It's hard. I feel like you get to that point in the ballet where you've given it your all and you're completely exhausted and you're went to that place mentally. It definitely takes a while to come back a little bit to reality and a little bit just like your own body. I feel like, even after Act 1, the other day I was sitting like this, you're just zoned out, you were just in this other world nonstop, and it takes you a minute or two to come back to get out of that space and go out of what you were just doing. It's hard to explain, because I feel like I am myself, because I am myself in the ballet, but it's just to get out of that mentality of it, of the anger and the down and the loneliness.
And you can see it too, because it's tricky. They'll finish, and the Mary, she's done maybe a minute before the Rudolph is, right? And so then she walks around, and you'll see that people will want to be like, "Good job," or "You look beautiful," but at the same time, you're like, I don't know if I could talk to them. Are they okay? Do they want the compliment? Do they not? Because you can see, when they come off, even just from the studio space, that you guys are, still processing, what has happened. And so it's, even as, fellow dancers, sometimes we're do they want us to say good job? Or do they, don't touch me? It's
I have to say, today we kind of did a run, and it's been a while since we kind of run the ballet again. And literally, I get teary-eyed. And it's not, I shouldn't be crying about it, but there is this weight, there's this dark energy then, and I feel heavy, my body feels you literally, but I think it's that, you literally give your all, physically and emotionally, and I feel I literally have a moment, I need to sit down, and I hear this beautiful music. The problem is that the ballet ends with this stunning music. So, I have to take a moment for sure to and I cannot imagine Rudolph. Yeah, you can see it in their faces how intense it is.
But it's just so rewarding. Like there's nothing like it to go on a journey like that. I feel like that's exactly what you want in your career, to have these moments where you can just completely lose yourself and to be in a different world and to be in the moment, to have these experiences.
Yeah.
How accessible do you think this story is to a diverse 21st century audience? As
But-
well, and the second part is, how accessible are these characters to young artists now?
Okay. So the question is about how accessible is this story to 21st century audiences and the characters? Is that the second part?
Characters to them as well.
And the characters as well. How are they accessible to 20? I mean, they're historical characters. Is there relevance to today?
I would say yes. I mean, I think that even though even though the show itself is appropriate for less people, in the sense, right, like I wouldn't bring your kid to this ballet, right? This is definitely more of like a date night or adult thing. So it's not accessible in the sense of like all ages, but I think that like people can probably find pockets of finding themselves in the ballet more, right? Like people don't come to Sleeping Beauty and like see themselves as Aurora. You know what I mean? Like you watch that for the sake of ballet and beautiful technique and love, and it's lovely. But this, it's like everybody has dark moments. Like might not be as severe as what Rudolph goes through, but like everybody has struggles. Everyone has weird family dynamics. Everybody has difficulties with spouse and siblings and past relationships and like all of these things. So I think even if people can't see themselves in it in its entirety, there's moments that I think everyone in the audience can probably see themselves.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm doing my research and I'm reading about it. It kind of somebody compare it with like, the royal family now, right? Like this is still drama, still so much things happening. They're struggling with so much of what are their roles and they have to do and what society is telling you to do and what they want to do. So I feel like it's still kind of similar of that. The struggles of that kind of hierarchy and
Or any kind of sort of rigid
yeah.
structure or pocket of society where there's plenty of pockets outside of the royal family, I think, where there's a lot of expectation and obligation that hamstrings the members of the family.
As a theater, being in the theater, and as an audience member, can you feel us out there? Is number one question. And when we see you do something and we love it and we clap, does that break your concentration, or what do you do to say to just say thank you or not?
So and you're concerned maybe a little bit about disrupting the narrative flow for them.
Yes.
So the question is twofold. One, can you sense the audience when you're on stage? Can you feel their presence? And two, in a ballet like this, is applause disruptive or yes? I can leave it at that.
I feel like we could definitely sense the audience. It's sometimes how much you want to sense them. In some ballets, you want that energy. You want that. I want to show you all what I'm doing. And some, it's the story where I'm just invested in here and I'm just opening it up to you. It's like the fourth wall. Like I'm not just going right here. I'm doing everything around me, and this is just a part of the world. And then for clapping, for this one, you'll definitely know when to clap. It's just it's at the end of the ballet. There's not really this like the solo and I'm done, and here you should clap now. I think it's a complete storyline the entire time. The music doesn't stop; it always just goes through. But for most ballets, we love the clapping. We love the support.
This is for Karina. Your baby's precious.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Would you be willing to share some unique challenges of coming back from maternity for an answer?
So this question is about Karina recently returned from maternity leave. Just how that's going and the challenges of it.
Yeah, so I have to share that this was my goal. So after having my second girl, my goal was to be back strong to do Mayerling. So I did have kind of like, you know, week by week, I knew that I have goals to do, to get. I think the biggest challenge is, I think it's for sure, it's the changes of the body. It's the strength. I feel like I lost so much stamina. I lost so much muscle strength, and trying to find that again, it has been like the biggest challenge. But we have an incredible team that is there, you know, supporting us. And I did a lot of extra. I have to do a lot of extra. I do Pilates on my days off. I add yoga to kind of like find that, you know, freedom again in my upper body. Of course, just I'm very committed to my class. I feel like my class is the one that kind of gets me stronger every day. And of course, you know, it's hard to leave the babies, you know, behind. But I think my biggest dream is that they're proud of Mama coming back for the second time, and they can see pictures and videos of what I have done, and they can dream big as I'm doing now. So.
Well, I think that's perfect. Thank you for taking an extra hour with us tonight away from the babies. It's been so wonderful to hear all three of you share your honest insight on your experience with this ballet and sharing with us what we can expect in a couple of weeks. So please thank my There are 3 casts of Mayerling. And I think, you know, if you can be sad 3 times, then you know, everyone's gonna. It's such an emotional ballet. Everyone's gonna take a little bit of a different aspect of it. So thank you so much for coming tonight. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks for 4 seasons.